Trump is whitewashing America's national parks, and the world is watching. While his administration systematically erases stories of slavery, displacement, and historical injustice from more than 400 park sites, nations across the globe are discovering something powerful. Honesty about the past doesn't weaken countries, it strengthens them. So what exactly is happening to America's national parks? And why are countries like Australia and Canada taking the opposite approach, finding strength and even more visitors by telling the full truth about their histories? To understand the scale of what's happening, we need to look at what's being removed. A few months ago, visitors to Fort Pulaski National Monument in Georgia noticed something was missing. The famous 1863 photograph known as the scourged back, which shows an enslaved man's back marked by deep scars from whippings, had quietly disappeared from its exhibit. Internal emails obtained by the New York Times indicate staff were instructed to remove or cover the image as part of a sweeping review of negative content in national parks. That blank frame represents something much bigger. In March 2025, Trump signed an executive order titled Restoring Truth and Sanity to American History, demanding that the Interior Department ensure interpretive materials do not inappropriately disparage Americans past or present. The administration claims to restore truth and sanity to American history, yet the reality is quite different. They're removing actual truths and sanitizing painful realities that help us understand how we got here.
I heard that the president heard our ad. I'm sure he wasn't too happy, but it's real because it was coming from the best president the country's ever seen, Ronald Reagan. So it's very effective. It's probably one of the best ads I've ever seen, and it's coming from Ronald Reagan's voice. And it's going to be focused right across the country, but also in Republican-held areas, because what I feel, the Reagan Republicans are going to be fighting with a MAGA group.
Under that directive, more than 400 park sites' signs, exhibits, digital content, and gift shop displays are under scrutiny. The scope of this censorship campaign is staggering. Parks have been ordered to remove signage noting that lands once belonged to indigenous nations, or to alter displays that highlight forced removals and broken treaties. At Manassas National Battlefield, signs critiquing lost cause mythology and calling out slavery's role in the Civil War were flagged for removal. At Independence National Historical Park, exhibits about George Washington's enslaved workers were labeled as corrosive ideology and marked for rewriting. Staff at Arlington House were ordered to stop distributing a children's booklet explaining how Robert E. Lee had broken his oath to the United States by joining the Confederacy. The administration didn't stop there. References to slavery have been scrubbed from web pages dedicated to the Underground Railroad. Information about the transgender community's contributions at Stonewall National Monument has been deleted. Climate change information has been removed from multiple park websites, including those for Hawaii Volcanoes National Park and Acadia National Park. According to the Sierra Club, more than 1,000 items were flagged for review at national parks. This isn't just about removing a few signs, it's about fundamentally changing how America tells its story to the world. When you sanitize the stories our parks tell, you don't just lose historical accuracy, you lose the chance to understand one another through the full story of this country. These lands were meant to hold truth, not whitewash it. But here's what makes this even more significant. While America retreats from historical honesty, other countries are moving in the opposite direction.
Here's my take. Last week's ceasefire in Gaza was an undisputed success for President Trump and his style of foreign policy. He and his team engaged in intense personal diplomacy, persuading Israel to hold its fire and coaxing the Qataris, Egyptians, and Turks to lean on Hamas. For a president who relishes deals and drama, the grand signing ceremony in Egypt was a natural stage. But as the Middle East quieted, another, much more important theater grew more discordant, that involving U.S.-China relations. In this arena, Trump has lurched from threat to retreat to confusion. First, he threatened new 100% tariffs and warned that he would cancel a planned meeting with Xi Jinping. Then, as Beijing refused to blink, Trump quickly softened, posting a conciliatory message on social media about wanting to help China, not hurt it, AIDS reverse course, saying the Trump-Xi summit would take place after all? The pattern, loud threats, quick backdowns, and ensuing uncertainty has become familiar. The problem is that Trump's diplomatic playbook, effective in the Middle East, fits poorly in the longer, larger struggle with China.
The contrast with nations that are embracing difficult histories couldn't be more stark. They're finding strength, credibility, and even increased tourism by confronting the full truth of their past. Take Australia. For more than 220 years after Indigenous peoples were forcibly removed by British colonizers, the country has been working to hand back control of ancestral lands. In recent years, Australia created 3 new marine parks in collaboration with Indigenous people, totaling over 2,300 square miles. These parks are co-managed using both traditional Aboriginal knowledge and modern environmental practices. Indigenous rangers are trained to control fires, monitor biodiversity, protect cultural sites, and educate tourists about Aboriginal heritage. The result? Australia's tourism industry has found that visitors are drawn to authentic stories that include 60,000 years of native culture. People want to understand the real history, not a sanitized version. As one Indigenous leader put it, the creation of these marine parks shows true co-design between government and traditional owners can be achieved. Canada is taking a similar approach. After acknowledging that its national park system was built on the forcible exclusion of Indigenous peoples, the country is fundamentally rethinking how parks operate. The creation of Taidene Nene, after 5 decades of negotiations, represents a complete inversion of the traditional power structure. The park is co-managed between Parks Canada, the Wutsil Dene First Nation, and the territorial government. It allows First Nations and Métis fishing, hunting, and travel throughout the region, with an administrative center built in the community to create local jobs. This represents what one expert called a rethinking of the colonial mentality of creating parks by removing people from the land. The contrast couldn't be starker. While America removes references to slavery and Indigenous displacement, Canada acknowledges that its parks were colonial crime scenes and works to make things right. While America deletes information about climate change, Australia and Canada integrate traditional ecological knowledge with modern science. The results speak for themselves. Countries that embrace historical honesty aren't seeing decreased tourism or damaged reputations. They're seeing the opposite. Visitors respect authenticity. They want to understand the real stories of places they visit. They're drawn to countries that can honestly confront their past while working toward a better future. Countries around the world are taking notice, running their own campaigns and advertisements about how they handle historical truth differently. They understand that in today's interconnected world, how a nation treats its history sends powerful signals about its values and democratic commitments. This matters because national parks are more than tourist destinations. They're spaces where nations tell their stories to the world. When America strips away the painful chapters, it doesn't just deny those communities a connection to public lands, it sends a message about who belongs in the American story and whose experiences matter. There's a deeper principle at stake here. Democracy depends on the ability to confront uncomfortable truths about the past in order to build a better future. When governments start deciding which parts of history are too negative to discuss, they're not protecting national pride. They're undermining the very foundation of informed citizenship. The global implications extend far beyond tourism. In an era where America's credibility on human rights and democracy is already questioned, systematically erasing stories of historical injustice sends a troubling signal to the world. How can America lead on issues of justice and reconciliation when it won't even acknowledge its own difficult history? This is particularly striking given the timing. As authoritarian governments around the world engage in historical revisionism and memory suppression, America, supposedly a beacon of democratic values, is engaging in its own form of state-sponsored forgetting. The contrast with countries like Australia and Canada, which are working to integrate difficult histories into their national narratives, couldn't be more stark. What's being lost in America goes beyond individual exhibits or signs. It's the loss of what historians call complex patriotism. Love of country, that includes honest reckoning with both achievements and failures. Countries that practice this kind of mature patriotism tend to be more resilient, more trusted internationally, and more capable of addressing contemporary challenges. The economic implications are also significant. Cultural tourism, which includes visits to historical sites that tell authentic, complex stories, is one of the fastest growing segments of the global tourism industry. Visitors increasingly seek meaningful experiences that help them understand the real history and culture of places they visit. By sanitizing its historical narrative, America risks making its national parks less compelling to the very international visitors who contribute billions to the economy. The scientific community has also raised concerns. Climate scientists note that removing climate change information from park materials undermines public understanding of environmental challenges at a time when education about these issues is more crucial than ever. Parks have long served as living laboratories where visitors can observe and learn about environmental changes, a role that becomes impossible when the science is censored. Perhaps most troubling is what this says about American democracy itself. The ability to confront difficult truths about the past is a hallmark of healthy democracies. When governments begin controlling historical narratives to avoid disparaging the nation, they're following a playbook used by authoritarian regimes throughout history. The contrast with democratic allies who are embracing more honest, complex historical narratives is stark and concerning. The path forward requires recognizing that true patriotism includes honest acknowledgement of both achievements and failures. Countries like Australia and Canada are demonstrating that this kind of mature reckoning doesn't weaken nations, it strengthens them. It builds trust, attracts respectful international engagement, and provides a foundation for addressing contemporary challenges. America's national parks have the potential to be spaces where the full American story is told, including the difficult chapters that help explain how we got to where we are today. When we strip away those stories, we don't just lose historical accuracy, we lose the opportunity to learn from the past and build a more inclusive future. The world is watching how America chooses to tell its story. The choice between sanitized mythology and honest reckoning will say as much about America's future as it does about its past. While other democracies find strength in truth, America's retreat into historical revisionism sends a troubling signal about its commitment to the very democratic values it claims to champion. Thanks for watching. If you want to understand how other countries are reckoning with their colonial histories, check out our other videos. And if you want to stay updated on how global democracies are handling historical truth and reconciliation, be sure to subscribe for more in-depth analyses of these crucial developments.